Hey folks, it's Nate, and thanks for once again joining me as we look to the horizon. I'm back with the latest writing update, and it's pretty good. So I'm on to chapter 10, as you can probably see. This is what I intend to start editing this evening, or perhaps tomorrow morning. And I am pretty gratified because this is about the 2/3 mark. And when I'm editing from this handwritten copy to the word processor, I always find the first 2 or 3 chapters to be the slowest. They are the oldest. Typically, when I write a story, the final chapters have deviated somewhat from where I was expecting to wind up, and the first couple of chapters need to be adjusted the most to support the new ending. That's an important part of redrafting, at least as I write. And I think that, that is the slowest part of redrafting for me. So what this really means is that I hope I'm in the home stretch. I hope I won't have to do a whole lot of significant rewriting, just, tweaking word choice and sentence arrangement and things like that. And then I can just slam this all down and be done. It's my hope that by the time I record the next one of these, I will have the editing on this project done and I will be ready to talk about something else. I am doing a few other things that I am somewhat excited to talk about. But for right now, I'm waiting for reader feedback on what I've sent out, because I just sent out 5 more chapters. I sent chapters 5 to 9 to my beta readers, and that's always a little nerve-wracking. At this point, having done 1 1/3 stories with this particular set of beta readers, I am not as nervous as I was when I sent out the very first part of Firespinner to them. But you never know. You never know what you're going to get back. And that's part of the fun, but it's also kind of nerve-wracking. This is actually an interesting part of the writing process where you wait. You wait from the feedback from people who you know are going to have something to tell you, but you don't yet know what. I'd like to say I enjoy this part of the process, but I don't. I know some people do. They actually are really excited during this point, and not so much during the initial writing or the editing process. For me, probably the most exciting part is the initial writing, followed by the final editing pass, because I do like to see what a story looks like when it's done, and I am contractually obligated to be satisfied with it, because I try not to let myself write for any longer than a fixed period of time. Some people would say that that's lazy. Some people would say, isn't it better to have a fixed standard? I have found that having a strong deadline first is better. And it's an interesting question. I set myself hard deadlines first, and I now find that the things I write by the time I reach that hard deadline now are also things that I am satisfied enough with to publish. I have done a couple of fiction writing projects which no one will ever see. I hit my deadline on them, and I realized that I was not going to produce anything that I thought was worthy of sharing with the general public, and so I killed those projects. You're never going to read them. I suppose I could go back at some point, but I have so many other stories that I want to get down and tell that I don't. I'm not sure if the value is there. That's something I struggle with. Should I go back and revise a project that I know is quite old and quite flawed, or should I continue to press forward and make stuff that is less flawed in its foundations and just requires more polishing? Actually, a great example of that is the original fiction project I wrote for my blog, the Project Sumter Trilogy. I like some parts of that, but by and large, I don't think it's worth the time it would take to clean up and publish to Amazon. It's a decent story. It's 3 novels worth of material, which is nothing to sneeze at, but I don't think it's up to that standard yet, and I don't know as I have the time right now to take it and polish it up to that level. It's not flawed in premise, I can say that much, but I know a lot of the execution is quite rough. And I would have to go back and really put a lot of effort into smoothing all of that execution out creating something that I would be comfortable sharing with a paying audience. So I plan to just leave that. And believe me, I say that about Project Sumter. Well, things that came before that, that's definitely the case. So I went on a bit of a tangent there. I was not planning to talk about so much about finishing or editing, but that's, I suppose, the joy of vlogs. As regards more specifically upcoming things, if you don't follow me on Twitter or on Facebook or any of my other social media accounts, which I really should start putting in the video descriptions, I suppose, you can see there that I've been doing a lot of sketches recently, and I plan now to evolve that into a little bit of a serial storytelling experiment, at least through the month of July. It's going to be quite rough because I'm just sort of going with the flow and putting stuff on the page. I'm not going to have beta readers. I'm not going to have time to do a whole lot of editing with that. But I have a love for visual storytelling, and the writing for that is very different. The execution of that is very different. And I want to take the month of July to kind of play around with that a little bit. It's going to be different from the kinds of stuff you would read on my blog or that I talk about here. Probably shorter vignettes here and there. We'll see. But I'm doing a little pre-planning for that right now, as well as finishing the editing of Night Train to Hardwick. And I also have to outline Fire and Gold, which is going to be the third Roy Harper novella, which I have in concept, but the exact story beats and how they are best arranged kind of eludes me. Finally, I'm working a little bit on The Gospel According to Earth, which is the third Triad Worlds novel. If you have read my blog any, they are probably my work on that I am the most proud of. And I think the world building is pretty good. I think the story and themes are quite strong. I think the character beats are pretty strong. I'm very satisfied with the way the first two books in that came out. If you're not familiar with that, the basic premise of the Triad World is it revolves around a set of space colonies, 3 of them, well, technically 4, 3 of them directly from Earth and the 4th an offshoot of the other 3, that have lost contact with Earth and are attempting to reestablish relations, and they find Earth is not what they were expecting. Let's just say that. Book 1 focuses on a trio of spacers who are stranded on Earth. Immediately after the return, their ship is destroyed as soon as it leaves light speed, and they are stranded in an escape pod on a hostile planet. The second book takes a wider view of things and lets us know a little bit about what other things in the solar system are like, and what Earth's sudden dark turn has meant for other residents of the solar system. The third book is really about solving the problem of Earth in and of itself. And that has been a really thorny problem because I never intended for the Triad Worlds novels to be more than one novel. I was writing my own kind of take on the dystopian story that I thought was interesting and kind of thought-provoking, and it kind of spiraled out of control. I never really intended to break down the Unigov dystopia in a story that I wrote. I just kind of thought it would be like The Party in 1984, or, you know, any other dystopian system in your typical 60s to 80s dystopia. But I really kind of feel like that's one of the shortcomings of those kinds of books. We know what eventually happens to every dystopia because we've seen it happen to them time and time again in the 20th century. But it feels kind of natural to me, now that I am at this point in the story, to write a conclusion to the dystopia and put that authentic historical capstone on top of it. So the problem was I didn't have any idea specifically worked out, and now I do, kind of, but I have to sort the details, the implications, to what extent the technology I have already introduced will interfere with that or support that, those kind of things. You know, sci-fi writing at its dirtiest, and in my opinion, most interesting. I know for a lot of people that's not the most interesting part about it, but that's taking a while, and I'm still sorting it. I don't know if I'm going to write Fire and Gold before I write The Gospel According to Earth, and I may write another story that has been nagging at the back of my mind next instead. It's another novella called Burning Bright. It is a story of the Chosen Ones, and I think that is enough of a tease about it for now, because I honestly don't think that will be my next project, but you never know. Anyhow, that's the status of my writing this week. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. There's a like button and a subscribe button you can use as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.